Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been following the chess world at all over the course of your life, or in particular, if you've been following the chess world from September 4th, 2022 until today, November 11th, 2022, happy Veterans Day, then you probably know about the name Hans Niemann. And if you don't, well, you might be watching this in 2023 or 2024. By then, you probably do know the name Hans Niemann. Now, Hans Niemann obviously came into the limelight after the win over Magnus Carlsen in the Singfield Cup. And things have been pretty insane since then. As recently as 2 weeks ago, there was this massive lawsuit announced, and then everybody went quiet as they conferred with their legal team. But Hans Niemann played a chess tournament. He played a 9-round over-the-board event in St. Louis called the Fall Chess Classic. It's an event that they have every year. They invite players from all over the world, many different federations represented, and I'm going to take you through some of his games. And we're going to see how he did. And at the end, I'm going to have a bonus for you. Sounds good? All right, terrific. There you go. That's the introduction to the video. So Hans was playing a handful of players, and some of the games were just sort of high-level draws, and I don't want to waste your time with them. They were like 30 moves. The game was just equal the whole time. Relatively, boring game. He played a couple of very exciting games, though. One of them being against Thai Daivan Nguyen. It's a Vietnamese last name that are very tricky for me to pronounce, but you're seeing that correctly. Mr. Nguyen is actually from the Czech Republic. He is not from, I guess, Vietnam right now. Hans began this game with e4, and we got an Italian, so things you've seen before. Here, Hans already actually makes a mistake. He doesn't play the move b4, which is the Evans Gambit. He plays the move castles, which, is fine. Hans, of course, also could have played the Jerome Gambit after bishop f7, and then knight e5, queen h5 check, different stupid gambits. But we have castles, knight f6, and just a very solid and maneuvering game. It's very typical here. White plays the move rook e1, supporting the center. Black plays a5. a5 prevents white from playing b4 and wants to put the bishop back on a7 just to avoid generally getting hit. And then maybe there's some counterplay on the king side that black is looking for. White, unafraid, routes his knight to the f1 square. You'll notice the rook had to move over for that to happen. Because white has sort of a congested center here with not a huge amount of pawn play, it's difficult for white to put pieces out on their traditional squares. So in the Italian, you oftentimes rely on these weird maneuvers. Now, if you're watching this as a beginner or an intermediate player, and you're going, why is white playing so stupidly and not playing toward the center? You got to get good at chess to break the rules, right? The traditional rules of the game. So now Hans does, in fact, play this move b4. But at what cost, right? Because this rook is now active. This rook is sort of stuck. Nguyen plays bishop back to b6. Just generally, again, as I've said, trying to avoid this. Maybe the knight will go to a5, targeting the bishop. White doesn't want to rush with this move too quickly. You want to play it at the right moment. You want to be ready because, again, you will be opening up the position for black. As we already saw, this rook is very open. And in general, in chess, not all trades are not just always the same. And Hans waits a moment because he actually now has a little bit more central support with his knight. So now he takes, and the pawn takes on e6. And the queen has actually made a move that's kind of useless, right? So if you compare the position between here and here, the knight coming out is probably more useful than the queen coming out because it's not really clear what the queen is doing. If anything, the queen might want to be over there, right, to help with the attack. This knight might go to h5 and f4. My arrows drawing skills are very bad. b4, and now we have bishop takes knight. Very interesting move. Like trading the bishop for the knight, totally unprovoked. Why did black do that? Black did that because now black thought he was freezing up the queen side, and potentially he could start an attack on the king side, right? A rook a3, just always asking some questions. But instead of that, black plays fully on the queen side. So I thought he's freezing the queen side and did this, and at some point, we're probably going to see knight to h5, right? Like, this is just what I thought. I just thought it was a natural thing to think that, knight h5, knight g4, maybe g5 was on the way. No, it turns out that black actually wants to play over here. So I thought black was opening up the position, but no, here come the rooks. All right, Hans rejects a repetition here. You may notice attack queen, and if Hans had played one square back, they probably would have repeated moves. Hans chooses not to do that, and now we have the following position. Knight goes back to a7, looking to get to that b5 square where it would stand very mightily. So white plays rook a1, immediately going for an exchange of one pair of the rooks because the rook will not dominate the a file as it once did without the support of its friend. So black still kind of, Black very much wants a draw. As you can see, you have a second attempt at a repetition. Hans has the opportunity to repeat moves and make a draw, but Hans knows that he wants the Gotham YouTube video to go a little bit longer, so he doesn't do that, and again declines a draw. King to h7, but look at this. This is the third offer of a draw. King h2, king g8. Black played king h7 and king g8 because Black literally did not know what to do. And Hans says, you know what, to hell with this, d4. Oh my. Hans is blowing up the center of the board. Black plays knight takes e4, grabbing the pawn, but now Hans is better. Hans's provocations paid off. d5, infiltrating. The knight goes back. The pawn has entered the black territory. Now, the pawn is corralled. Okay, it's not so easy to do anything here, but e7 check is critical. You cannot block with the queen because I would take the knight. So the king goes to h7, and now white apparently has the devastating g4. g4 here would have been a spectacular move from Hans to suddenly just same side attack on that, basically just same side attacking the black king. g4 would have been an amazing idea, and he did play it, but not right away. First he played knight h4, but now that allowed black to get back. The knight jumped to f5, rook b8, defending the knight, anchoring that knight on b5, so now black can move the queen. Here comes Hans with f4, here comes e4, here comes g4 now. Oh my goodness, this attack is absolutely going to work, surely. I mean, how do you stop g5 and then maybe the queen getting to that h5 square, or rook g1 and rook getting to g7? Calm move by black, queen g8. A very well-timed move on the 38th move of the game, and I have a mosquito bite on my finger. How did that even happen? In the middle of the last, 3 minutes, my hand has been itching. What? It's like 40 degrees in New York. Why are they not dead? Anyway, e8 queen is an interesting move. Trying to deflect the queen this way. And if rook takes, there is this. But the queen could just take. And after the players both make 40 moves, it's actually black who is winning now. So as the dust settles in this game, black takes the upper hand and is now just a pawn up. Now, Hans still does have a pretty active position, and the threat of the attack is still there. And then here's something completely insane happens. So right now, black is -2. If black plays g6 here, kicking out the knight, and then d4, black is just winning. And I'm not exactly sure what black overlooked in this position. Like, the move f5 does look scary. Maybe that's what black saw, and saw, well, you know, I can't really take, because if I take, my king is weak. By the way, you can take, apparently. Your king is totally safe. Totally safe. And these pawns are just coming down the board. But what I don't understand is, in this position, up a pawn, black decides to swap the queens and offer a draw, and Hans Niemann accepts. What? Because now white can play here and here and, get in. There's, this hilarious rook journey. That would have been the idea. Rook c2. And it's unstoppable, actually. It's, kind of hilarious. So, what? You know what I felt like in this game? I felt like black snatched the draw from the jaws of victory. Black was just hell-bent on making a draw 3 times already, that the 4th time he got his chance. I mean, even here, black can play queen f7, stopping mate. And I don't know. I guess it's kind of silly to just make a random move, but black can play rook a3, g6 to kick the knight out. I don't know. But a very back and forth game that ultimately ended in a draw. Next one I have for you is Hans's game against Vidit. Yes, you are seeing that correctly. Vidit was invited to play in the event, and this was a crazy one. So it began with an IMSO Indian with e3, bishop d3, and knight f3. Very classical line where black has the isolated center pawn. Pawn has no E and C pawn friends. These 2 pawns are together and these 4 are together. But the thing about isolated pawn positions is the player who has it oftentimes will use it as kind of just a little mark in the position to plant the pieces around. It just has to be well defended, and it can't be targeted. And the thing is, when you have isolated pawn, you can't trade all your pieces, because what'll happen is it'll be a weakness forever. So Hans in this game does in fact blockade the pawn, and black sort of plays around it. You'll notice that it's kind of rock solid, but from an early spot in the game, I mean, it really seemed like Hans was doing great things. He got a nice blockade going. Everything looked good, right? Vidit started infiltrating on the king side. Now Hans plays b4, kicking the knight out of the center. Very tense position. f4 hits the queen. h4. All right, this looks a bit much. Does this look a bit much to any of you? A lot of light squared weaknesses here. And Vidit just grabs this pawn on b4. But the pawn on d5 falls. Now the isolated pawn is gone. However, sometimes the isolated pawn, if it gets captured in a trade, like you just saw, pawn for pawn, sometimes capturing that pawn from the person that has it helps them. Why? Well, we already knew that they had activity with the pawn on the board because they had all the lines around it, but now especially. And knight takes d4, rook d4. I mean, just look at this position. Black's bishops, rook, queen, everybody is pinning everything. It's a miracle Hans's position is going to survive this, especially as the knight hits the bishop, everything over here. Rook d1, rook e8. But Hans finds a way. He untangles and plays the move e4. Now, visually, I really like White's position here. The computer hates it because, I don't know, the computer is a scumbag. But I really like White's position. Yes, your king is a bit weak, but you have a very powerful bishop. Your rook and your queen just stare down the entire length of the board. I mean, position looks great, all right? So bishop f3, rook e1, queen e6, and the queen is now in the center of the board. And I think now we're going to start seeing why Black's position is so good. White is what we call overextended, okay? This term in chess means when you have just simply pushed your pieces, namely your pawns, too far. Notice Black's pawns. One of them has moved. The A pawn. Everything else in Black's position has not moved. Every pawn in Hans's position has moved, and way too far. 3 of them are at the center line, 1 is past it, which means that everything behind it is weak, which means that the more pieces you trade, the pawns will get weaker, right? And so what Vidit does is he starts collecting. We have a giant exchange, and we get into a rook and bishop endgame. Now, it's opposite colored bishops. It's a very legitimate chance this game just ends in a draw. Why? 3 on 3 on the same side. A5 will anchor in on the dark squares. You cannot get rid of that bishop. It'll likely be a draw. But Vidit just tries his best. All right, he gets a pass pawn. Now, by the way, Hans kind of rushed into this endgame. Hans went directly for the opposite colored bishop endgame and basically doesn't think he can lose. He's going to put his bishop right here, right? So there's the pawn. Now, the pawn gets pretty far, but now it's stopped. And the king is going to get over here, and this will be stopped. Now, h-pawn and bishop is a win for Black. Sometimes it's a draw, but the color corner has to match the bishop. So Vidit now plays h5, a very nice idea, trying to break up the white structure to give him stupid doubled h-pawns and enough passed pawns for Black. If pawns are on faraway flanks, it's just an easy win in the opposite colored bishop endgame because the king and the bishop are too far apart. They cannot stop both pawns. They're very close together, like A and B. There are some very legitimate fortress drawing chances. So Vidit just goes to work, right? He goes to work. It's a draw. Hans doing his best. Vidit's finding a way for his king to get in. And ultimately what happens is Hans does make a mistake. And defending the position was always going to be difficult, but the way Hans did it, he allowed Vidit to bully the pawns. And now Hans is forced to sacrifice an extra pawn. This might still be a draw, but it's very hard. Bishop back to b2 will win you the f6 pawn, but I told you the farther apart the pawns are, the likelihood of Black winning just skyrockets. It's very hard to defend. King c4, king e3, and Vidit's done everything right here. And what Vidit has to do right now is play bishop to c2. That attacks the pawn, and the only way to defend it is to go here, which frees up d3, and Black wins. That's just it. Black wins. For example, bishop to g7. This is not even a threat. Just bishop d1. It's not a threat because I queen. f6, well, bishop h5. And I stop you. Let's say the king tries to go help. Just b2. Just b2. The bishop cannot be blocked off the pawn. So Vidit has to go bishop c2 to force the king to f4 and king d3 and move the bishop and king c2. And he's completely winning. And he plays bishop g4. And bishop g4 allows this. Shocking. And now the Black king cannot cross. And if the Black king goes to b4, I just go back to b2. You never posed a serious problem to me, and I will continue to hang out here. I don't have to do anything. Right? Black is the one that has to win this position. So for example, h5, I can always go f6, but I can also just play like king f4. King c4, you try to come in, king g5. King d3, you try to come in, hello, hello. And And by the time you get to my pawn, I'm just going to sacrifice my bishop, and right, it's just going to be a draw. So Vidit literally just misses he just plays the wrong bishop move. He plays here, and now the game is a draw. And there is no way in for his king. He tries his best, but Hans has created a fortress. And they play this position for like 30 more moves because Vidit just probably couldn't believe it. I mean, look at this. That's it. It's just a total fortress. It doesn't matter. The pawns are far apart, but because white has the defensive capability to stop everything, it makes no difference. You stop the B pawn and you defend this. There's just nothing you can do. The king goes around that way. But now deflection. I get the H pawn, and that's it. This is just simply going to be a draw, and that's the end of the game. I mean, so close. Really so close. I mean, Vidit just literally a bishop move, 60 moves into the game. Can you imagine you play a 103 move game? That's what they just did. And one bishop move decides it. Yeah, chess is brutal. But the next game that I have for you is exciting. And I threw in a bonus game at the end. So if you're still here, trust me, this is going to be fun. This is a game between Ilya Niemann and, well, Hans Niemann, because the video is about him. And Hans in this game went for a Sveshnikov, one of the most theoretically sound and forcing lines in chess. It's the favorite of Magnus Carlsen, ironically. Knight b5, and now bishop g5 is the main line. Although Fabiano and Magnus really skyrocketed the popularity of the move knight d5 and explored it a lot in their World Chess Championship match back in 2016. That was it. Or no, 2018. 2018 in London. 2016 was Karyakin in New York. But this is the main line. All of this has been played many times before, and then here white chooses between c3, not allowing the pawn to come forward, and c4, forcing the pawn to come forward, and then rotating the knight over here. c3 is kind of a more corralling type of move. So you're not allowing the pawn to move. It also definitely, you cannot play a5 because bishop b5 would be a tragic ending to the game. So knight to c2, rook b8, and now white attacks the black structure with a4. Hans takes. And now b2 is under attack. So what on earth does white want? White wants knight b4. Look at this. Very interesting idea here. Plugging the b file. And basically what white wants now is to take these two pawns. Just basically saying those two pawns are stupid. I will take both of them. Then you will be down a pawn. Also, this pawn is bad and you can't push it forward. I don't care that your bishop can go here. It controls nothing. It's actually a very interesting idea. The problem is a good Sveshnikov player is ready to deal with stuff like this. And yeah, white, this excursion down to a6 is just incorrect. Like, it's just not the right plan at all. White should be focusing on d5. White should not be focusing on opening the lines of the Sveshnikov position. It's a very dynamic and scary opening. And when you do things like this, it's essentially tying your shoes together. Hans notices that while he's down a pawn, this does not look kosher. All right? So what does he do? White needs a couple more moves. For example, you give white one more move, he's going to go here. Or, sorry, that was a mouse slip. I was supposed to go to e2. And you give white, like, one more move, he's going to castle and play rook d1. So white is one or two moves away from consolidating. So what does black have to do? Blow up the board, d5. There we go. d5, striking immediately in the center. And queen b5 attacks the bishop. And queen e7 defends the bishop. This is still a question. You can take on d5. You can try to be up two pawns here. I will go here. You can try to hang on to your two pawns. I will go rook d6. Now this is under attack. You shouldn't have messed around. Really. And then I will play rook a6, rook a6. We'll get down to this position and queen and bishop will beat rooks. They just will, because that's the way it works. So, bishop e2. Niemann is now sacrificing the center pawn in order to castle. And Hans says, I'm good, rook a7. I want to double up, and I want to get to this knight and this rook, because what have you done over here? We have rook a3. Now Hans takes, and Hans is like, the initiative will not die. The initiative is not over. e3. Look at this nice move. Giving back a pawn. Giving back a pawn. That's just a free pawn. But the idea is bishop g5 immediately. And it's actually very hard to defend yourself. If you play the move queen d3, this is a problem. This is a problem. So Niemann decides, I'm not going to take. I'm going to play f3. But now this pawn is here to stay. That pawn's a problem. It's going to be an endgame liability. And, by the way, Hans has another e-pawn, e4. Oh, my. Oh, my. Knock, knock, knocking on Ilya's door. e4. Take, take. Mate is threatened. It could be stopped. But the craziest thing is, I don't care. I don't care if it's stopped. The bishop is protected, and I'm still going e2 and e1 because you allowed me to have that pawn. Now I'm going to take, and here comes rook e8. Overprotecting the e-pawn for the future. Queen d6. And black is just in a coordinated way just dead. The rook can't move. The queen can't move. The knight can't move. None of white's pieces can move. So what does Hans do? Go straight down the board. Uses that e-pawn anchor for the white position. That's it. You're going to lose defense of this. You can play a move like king f1 in this position. But the absolutely fascinating thing is that actually defends nothing. Because rook takes a6. If queen takes a6, e2 and e1. If rook takes a6, probably just queen c1, e2, and where's mate? Queen e3. Wow. Rook takes a6. And if you take this first, I mean, I can take with check, but I can also just take, make a queen. Life is good. Rook takes a6. And Hans Niemann wins in under 30 moves with black. What a game by Hans. Hans understood in this game that white was doing some goofy stuff. Like this whole excursion over here to a6 and queen a4. Yes, white won a pawn, but sabotaged his development and his king safety. And Hans just bullied the center of the board. Taking on e4, e3, e4. Just very nice. Chopping down that center. And, well, I mean, he made it look easy against a 2,700 level opponent. So a very nice game from Hans. Now, Hans actually finished this tournament with a very, very funny score. So I'm going to show it to you. Hans ended this event, got to pull this up a little bit, with 5 out of 9. And he was in 4th place. He had 8 draws and 1 win. The only time he could have lost really was to Vidit, and he didn't. And he ended the tournament actually quite solid. You know how many rating points he gained for 5 points out of 9? He lost 0.5. But he performed at a 2699 level. So, I don't know. The plot thickens. I love it. I feel like all of Hans's games are going to get shown and broadcasted and dissected. And listen, I'm happy to see him playing. He's going to be playing another tournament. He's going to be playing another tournament. I believe the World Team Championship. I don't know where that's being held, but I think that's being held at the end of the month of November. So we'll be seeing him there. And I told you I was going to have a bonus game for you. So if you can give me like 5 more minutes of your time. I really enjoyed this game as well. This is not a Hans Niemann game, but I really wanted to include it because I saw it in the game recap of the tournament. This is the last round, and the players are Nijat Abbasov from Azerbaijan and Nicholas Theodorou, who I have played many times, from Greece, but really in St. Louis. And in this game, black played the Tarrasch defense. The Tarrasch defense is a direct assault on the white center, but it's a tiny bit flawed because, again, you sort of spread thin your defenses. Like, it's kind of hard to defend yourself, but black is fine. It's a very risky opening, though, if you're not very well prepared. But in this game, after cd5, Theodorou played cd4, which, to the untrained eye, literally just hangs a pawn. Like, if you do the math, it just hangs a pawn. And you're right, it does. But only if black doesn't know what he's doing. This is actually called the Skara Gambit. Von Henning Skara Gambit. And it was played in the Global Chess Championship by Dmitry Andreikin over against Wesley. So there is this line, Queen A4 check, which puts a piece in front of the black king first. And now we have the following position. Here, the best move for white is just to go back. After something like knight c6, knight f3, bishop c5, e3, this is the optimal setup. The queen needs to be back so she cannot be bullied. If the queen is out and about in this position, she will be attacked by the black pieces, and in being attacked, black will get a strong initiative. But in this game, Abbasov did not know this line at all, and he thought for 10 minutes and played queen g5, which is a recipe for disaster. Because that queen is going to be attacked multiple times, but not right away. Okay, now white still can play e3, knight f3. Now he plays bishop d2. And the craziest thing is on move 9, he's already worse. He's up a pawn, but it's minus 0.4. All right? So think about that. And after h6, queen g3, he plays this. He completely does not develop his kingside. So for the second time in today's video, we're seeing what happens if you don't develop your kingside correctly. Theodorou plays castles. And I just want to say, this is the perfect last round weapon. This is the last round of the tournament, round 9. So everybody's played everybody. They're playing each other. Why do I say it's the perfect last round weapon? It's the perfect last round weapon because in the last round of a tournament, you're done. If you're not playing for first place or you're not playing for a norm, which none of these guys are, they're done. They just want to make a quick draw, go have a beer, orange juice, mocktail, whatever it might be, and that's just what they want to do with their lives. So when you play a goofy, stupid opening in the final round of a tournament that's very aggressive and your opponent doesn't know what to do, it's a recipe for just disaster, which I've already said. And now you see the disaster unfold. White is dead lost in 12 moves. A 2650 rated player is dead lost in 12 moves. That's nuts. That never happens. Why is it dead lost? Because White has not developed the right way. White never played this move E3, and now that you're going to play E3, it's too late. Rook E8. You will never get my knight out of the center of the board. And what's more, you will never get any of my pieces out of the center of the board. For example, let's say White plays bishop D3 and tries to castle. The queen is trapped. Yeah, the queen is trapped. It cannot go here, be taken by the queen, can't go here, taken by the bishop, taken by the knight, taken by the knight. It can't move. You say, okay, well, that's easy. I'll just play bishop E2. Duh. Now there's no knight H5. And what happens when I take? If you play knight takes E2, then I play knight E4. And then if you play queen A3, I take, and then you take, and then I still win your queen. Bishop G4. Or bishop C6 check. So, all of a sudden, White is completely lost. Queen H4. Bishop C6. Knight goes out to B5, trying to trade pieces, but White can't move. The only thing White could have done here is played bishop to E2, gave away the G2 pawn, and then did something like this, and tried to survive, down a knight, but trying to win, I don't even know. Knight B5 though, and Theodoro just attacks the queen, drives in here. This is checkmate threatened. And now Theodoro says, I've got all the pieces, centralized, pressuring the white position. What do you do when the opponent's king is stuck in the center? You shred open the center. Knight takes F2. Something takes back. Knight takes E3. The white king has been stripped of defenses and will now be mercilessly hunted. Bishop takes E3. We throw in a check. We force the knight back. We play bishop takes E3. Now we are attacking the queen and the knight, and any move is discovered check as well. And we don't even need to make a discovered check. Look at this incredible move, H5. Coordination from the other side of the board. The queen has to move again. And now we have queen F5, threatening mate once again, threatening this, and threatening bishop F2, threatening bishop D2, bishop C1. So many discovered checks. Knight to D3, and now black just brings the rook. Theodoro's not in a rush. Literally, he's just down a full piece, but it doesn't matter. It just makes no difference. And now comes the absolute shredding of the white position. Takes, queen to F3. There are a million different mates. And I found this move hilarious. But Theodoro here missed mate in 2. Theodoro in this position missed checkmate in 2 moves. Can you find it? Queen F2 check. Knight here. Bishop D2 is a double check and a mate. Oh my god. Have you ever seen something like that? Queen F2, bishop D2. And Theodoro misses mate in 2. Now he still has mate. But he goes bishop G5 back. He misses mate in 2 again, by the way. Queen F2 and bishop D2. Isn't that funny? And black just resigns here. White resigns. White resigns, not black. Bishop H4. Position is just completely lost. Bishop H4 is going to be mate. You can play queen C4, which stops that, but then I will go here. What a game. So Hans finishes the tournament relatively balanced. The winner of the event was Yu Yangyi from China. Very solid performance by him. Vidit Gujarati also had a very solid tournament. And I believe the player from the Czech Republic finished 3rd place. So, yeah, good event for Hans. We'll update for about Hans's career, and he'll be playing again at the end of the month. So the plot thickens, y'all. It's crazy. I really, I mean, several grandmasters thus far have said that Hans is probably like 2650 strength, regardless of any of this drama. And yeah, he could really be 2650, 2700, and completely legitimate over the board. And oh boy, what a story that would make. I'll see you in the next video. I'm back home, by the way. Did you notice? I'm back home. Anyway, get out of here.